Thank you so much for watching my show, William Wallace for America. I am William Wallace, and with me today is Representative Louisiana State Rep Laurie Schlegel. Representative Schlegel, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, William, for having me.
You're welcome. I tell you what, I've been watching you since you got elected in a special election, I think, correct?
That's correct. It'll be
And,
2 years in next month.
I got to tell you, you are working really hard for the people in your district. I've watched some of your legislation. I've watched how hard you're working for the people in your district, and I'm really impressed. You seem very even keeled and very fair, across the line, and your legislation seems very well thought out. And I appreciate that about you.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate the kind words.
Well, you've got some legislation for this session. They start in about a week and a half, and I'd like to share with the people of not only Louisiana but also people watch me nationwide, and I think it's very interesting to see what's going on in Louisiana as a good example of some thoughtful legislation. You want to share some of your bills with us so people can see it?
Sure. So this session, my biggest priority is public safety. So there's obviously been an uptick in crime. And so before every session, I send out a survey to my district and just asking them, what's important to them. I also ask them if they support or oppose different issues that I know are going to come up this session. And hands down, no matter your political affiliation, number one was crime. And so with that, I wanted this session to sort of be dedicated to some of the issues that are actually occurring in my district and also just in the surrounding parishes. So that's what a lot of my legislation this session is being dedicated to.
I like how you sampled your district on what's important, but you found a way to think out, that legislation in a way that it would apply to everybody in the state. Because, of course, to get that legislation passed, you got to be able to make everybody happy. I don't mean make everybody happy in a political sense, but but show that it's going to do well across the state.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of the big major cities are experiencing an uptick in crime. So the issues that I address here, they're also happening in other cities. So I definitely think it's not just for my area, but it will help affect the state. And I think they're very measured and reasonable approaches to trying to get a handle on crime.
So let's talk about that first one.
Okay, so the first one is HB 16, and that has to do with simple burglary. So really trying to tackle what's been occurring with the break-ins to cars. And so it's two parts. So one part handles a lot of what's been happening in some of the residential areas where there's been a string of car burglaries. A lot of times they happen at night, in the middle of the night while people are sleeping. People are breaking into their cars and just hitting multiple streets, multiple cars.
Right.
So that's a big thing that's been happening. Also, it addresses where a lot of these string of burglaries are happening in economic driver events. So like the Pelicans games, Saints games, fairs.
Okay.
And so what it is, it's an enhancement of a penalty that normally would occur with simple burglary. So it's the first year is not probatable. So if you commit these crimes, the message is that you will serve time. And so it's kind of similar to looting in that way, where it's theft. Looting is just theft, but it happens in times of very vulnerable situations. And so there's an enhancement and penalty. And so the same goes for this, because they're taking advantage of very vulnerable situations. And so that's one of my first bills. So that's HB 16.
I like that. That's interesting. Like you said, even though just the random going around, not grabbing on the door handles, is simple. Has been simple theft. This is a way to send the message that, hey, look, it's no longer a air quotes simple thing anymore. It's something that's going to be more serious. So you're right. I think it puts more of a deterrent on it. I like that one. It's good. It's simple and yet I think very effective.
Yeah, and it hits. So, I mean, one, obviously, when nobody wants to go down anymore and go to some of these economic driver events. So you're not just affecting the person that you destroy their car by breaking into their, and stealing whatever's inside, but you're also hurting the people that, that rely economically on these events. And then I got a phone call from a resident in my area after they did a string of burglaries. And she was just saying it's so scary because her car is parked like right by the bedroom of her child. So she's like, in the middle of the night, these people are right there in your property. And so there's a huge, public safety issue when it comes to that. And so I think it's just a measured approach. And then, just also telling them that this isn't going to be tolerated. So,
It's not going too far, it's going just far enough, I think.
yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I like that, and I like this legislation better than other laws I had heard about where they were trying to put the onus on the property owners of the businesses and stuff, and I think this is a little bit more, reaching out to the criminals in a way that it puts the burden on them to stop the action instead of a property owner, so I like this. That's
Yeah.
good.
The accountability and the consequences should never be on the victim.
I
So they're
like that.
already suffering because they've been a victim of a crime.
That's
And
very well
yeah,
put.
it's got to be put on the perpetrator.
I love that.
Yeah.
So what's your next piece of legislation you're filing?
All right. So and the next one in terms of crime is HB 54. And so that one has to do with certain juveniles that are charged as an adult. And so recently we had the New Orleans DA miss the time frame to charge. It was a juvenile who broke out of a juvenile detention center in Jefferson Parish
Right.
to New Orleans, carjacked the guy, shot him, and almost killed him. And so he missed the deadline, and then the judge threw out the charges. And so what this bill does is it extends the time frame from 30 days to 60 days. So, from some of these more severe crimes that might need some more investigating
I like it. Yeah.
screening time, it gives a little bit more time, but it also makes clear. So my understanding in the law is that this has to do with bail and holding a juvenile, not necessarily that you can't charge them as an adult at a later date. There's another portion in the law that I guess addresses prescription. So it just sort of makes it clear, especially to the judges, that we're specifically talking about bail and holding a juvenile, and then also the time to screen the case. And so just sort of, I want to make sure that the
Great.
juveniles that are committing these really violent crimes are being charged as an adult. And so this bill just sort of makes things clear. And I'm actually, Rep. Hilferty is a co-sponsor with that on me.
And what I like about this is like you're not making it penalty harsher. You're just they're giving you more time to have some clarity. And sometimes this works out for everybody's favor, in everybody's favor, where more time gives everybody, where they're not rushed to judgment. They have more time to really investigate what the right thing to do is.
Yeah, so I think you're right. Like, so depending on what side you're on, right?
Yeah.
I think you can understand this bill because more time would make you for proper screening. And then it also gives them, the DA more time. So I think all in all, it's sort of a reasonable approach to it.
Love it. I love it. So what's your number? Because now there's 5 non-fiscal and then some fiscal maybe, but so are we going over your non-fiscal ones first?
Yeah, so these are the non-fiscal criminal bills.
Okay.
So, and then the last one is HB 84 that deals with criminal, crime. And so that has to do with carjacking. So actually, in the last 4 years, carjackings done by juveniles has doubled in 4 years.
Hmm.
And so we're really seeing an uptick there. And if you've seen like the recent news, actually people have lost their life during carjacking.
Right.
Recently, the woman who got caught with the car and severed her arm. And then there also was another woman that got rolled over,
Yeah.
was learning to walk. So these are severe violent
Right.
crimes. And so as a juvenile, you can actually get probation for carjacking. And so as an adult, you cannot. So we recognize that this is a severe violent crime that should not be probatable. So I'm just putting that in line with that, where it's in line with armed robbery, where a juvenile cannot get probation if they commit a carjacking.
I like this. So basically, it's lowering the threshold, if you will. So a severe crime can reach down a little bit, but I guess if they don't commit something severe during the carjacking, the other rules apply. Is that how that works?
Yes. So, right. If, because sometimes maybe people won't be armed, right, to commit
Right.
carjacking, but the result could still be the same, right? It's still a carjacking just in itself, I think, is a violent type crime,
Right.
right? You're taking somebody who's sitting in a car or whatnot.
Right.
So, I just don't think it should be a probatable offense. It's not for adults. And so, it's just putting it in line. Actually, that's one of the specific questions, not necessarily about carjackings, but that I asked the district, just saying, for violent crimes, do you think juveniles should be treated as an adult? And across the board, it was one of my highest supported ones where it hit like 82% supported that notion. Because when you do those types of crimes, I don't think that, like, again, probation should be one of the things
Right.
on the table.
Well, yeah, it shouldn't even be an option,
No, it should not.
in that case. It's about public safety. I
It's
love that.
it's
I love the direction all these are going in. So what's your fourth one?
So my other two that are non-fiscal have to do with just protecting children online. So one of them has to do with, in the real world, you cannot contract with a minor without a parental consent. So no
Okay.
company, but yet we are sort of allowing that on social media. And so social media, a 13-year-old can set up an account. They actually have to, sign up for the terms of agreement, the
Yeah,
terms of
exactly. Yeah.
use and all that. And so in what real world scenario would we ever allow a minor to contract with a company? And so it's really kind of just a benign but very powerful statement of, like, you cannot, online, you cannot contract with a minor without parental consent. So
So
kind of
with this
a
so let's say a national so let's say a social media company that might be a national social media company, this law would affect so if they're in Louisiana, and I'm just, trying to figure this out, they might that parent and sitting with their minor child may have to check a box that says, if you're in Louisiana, you have to check this box, because if this law, passes in Louisiana, of course it's not going to apply to minors and parents in other states. So how would that work here? Or do I have that right?
No, that's exactly right. They would have to, I mean, and really, and it's interesting. I'm not creating, in a sense, a new law. This is
Right.
already the law where you cannot contract with a minor. We've just sort of given a pass, to online companies. And
Exactly.
so what the bill does is just say, if you do contract with a minor, so let's say a minor, goes on,
Well,
does an account, has to do the terms of that, the contract is null and void. And so that's just pretty much saying you don't really have an active contract with that minor, even though
okay.
you do, because you had them sign up an account,
Yeah.
you sign up on these things, but it's just pretty much saying, so if a lot, it's just saying that no, you do not.
I like this. If that social media company, allows a minor in Louisiana to sign the agreement, that social media company either has to understand that, hey, Louisiana, this isn't going to apply, or they have to put something on their website that says, if you're a Louisiana resident, kind of thing. But I like this, because I can't tell how many times you see, children with their parents and they're on their phone, and the parents not even watching what they're doing. And I'm not being critical to the parent. The child might be texting their parent for all we know. But in general, if that child goes on to a social media company and fills out a contract, the parent has some backup to know that they're protected, that that child, doesn't sign something that, drags the whole family in, if you will.
Right. No, because that's exactly right. Because parents are the ones that are responsible for their child. So, like, if you're, as a company, contracting with my minor child
Yeah.
without my consent, it's just saying, yeah, you do not have a contract. And look, other states are taking even further steps in this area. I mean, you see this, and look, parents are very much, we are some of the gatekeepers too, to help our child.
Right.
The internet is so pervasive and invasive that, it's
Mhm.
like TV, right? I mean, it's even more invasive and pervasive than TV. And so we also need the companies to be responsible too. And I don't
Uh,
think they really have been. And you're starting to see, and it's bipartisan. I mean, you're seeing
yeah.
at the federal level that people want social media companies to start being responsible to children.
Yeah, like I said, it's not that they're doing anything nefarious, or their intentions weren't nefarious, but as society, we have to just be aware that this is happening, and we have to set up those safeguards. I like that. What's your other one?
So my other one is not similar in that vein, but it's similar in protecting children, and it's really just a second step from a bill that I passed last year, around, explicit material and material harmful to minors. So for pornography websites to do age verification to make sure that minors are not entering into their sites, which most of their sites are hardcore pornography. And so I passed that bill last session, and we have a couple of companies, pornography websites complying, some are not. And so what this does is it gives the AG authority to also, put civil penalties for any companies that aren't complying with our law.
I
So
like this.
it's called the PAVE Act. It's going to be the Pornography Age Verification Enforcement Act.
I mean, these are just common sense things. These aren't ideological. They're not narrative driven. This is just common sense stuff that I like the way that you pointed out that, I don't think that the the websites or the social media companies actually, and I'm giving them more, all of the social
Don't give
media
the pornography websites any deference though, because
yeah, I'm not yeah,
they do
yeah,
not
but
care about children.
right, exactly.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, and I was just trying to be more general speaking that we are where we are because of, the path that has happened, and this is basically setting up a roadblock so it doesn't continue, to attack children, and I just think it's very well thought out,
thank you.
yeah, and I like that. And when I say not narrative driven, it's just common sense,
It's com
is what this
so,
is.
again, going back to so, I mean, we had bipartisan support on this. I think there was only one member that voted no, so pretty much unanimous vote. And so, again, it was bipartisan support, but going back to our laws that we currently have on the books, we don't allow minors to go into strip clubs
Right,
or to go into casinos and so it's just for adult behavior. It's just doing
right,
some age restriction, just like we do in the physical world and really on the online world too, because we have now online gaming and we also have alcohol delivery, which we both require age verification. And so it's just putting it all in line.
right.
Like we've sort of given the internet a pass. And so, so this is just the second portion of the bill to say you're not complying with Louisiana law, then our AG can have authority to put civil penalties.
Well, you're very smart and intelligent description that you just now explained it better to me. You are it gave me a better way to say it. We are where we are, as a result of society changing, and what you've done is you're just being aware of those changes and being aware of the gaps in the system that need to have a solution to protect children.
Right,
And
right.
and
The
so
technology, the internet has totally changed.
yeah, it's a changing world, and I'm just glad that you're being aware of that, and I'm glad that you're doing these things to protect children. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Do,
Thanks. So
do,
those
do,
are all my general bills.
do you have any fiscal bills coming out?
I have one fiscal bill, and it
Okay,
has to do with it has to do with increasing the tax deduction for people who spend money for private tuition, for education, for homeschool, and for people who spend money for public education. And so that that amount was set in 2008. It was 5,000. So that is the up to that you can deduct. And so 2008, we know that things have changed.
right,
Inflation, cost of education, I
right,
think it's increased about 20%. And so I'm trying to increase it to 6,000 to sort of give those families a break that are paying taxes, but they're also having to pay for their children's education. And so, they're saving the state and the local government money because they're not putting their kids into public schools.
right.
But so it gives them a little bit of a tax break.
So what would they have to do to be able to qualify for this tax break?
So you have to spend it would increase it to 6,000. So if you spend up to 6,000, obviously on any kind of educational expenses, tuition, homeschooling, it
Okay,
just allows it to increase to
and that
6,000.
comes out their state taxes.
Yes, for state.
Awesome. And just to clarify, yeah, it's at 5,000 right now. You said
Currently at 5,000, which was
okay,
set in 2008. And so
okay,
I just want to up it to, I'm doing the 20% increase, which we
right,
see that would education now with inflation, that probably should be even more.
right.
But I
But
want
you're not going for the
to,
big goal. You're just saying, "Hey, look what's reasonable, what we can reasonably assess right now."
right.
I
So
like this.
yeah, and that's all my bills.
I like that this is one of those things that like you said that should have been adjusted with inflation that didn't get adjusted with inflation, and I'm glad that you're bringing this up. So, is there anything that you're supporting in with other legislators this year?
Well, education is a huge, also passion of mine. I did a bill last year around literacy and having free book deliveries to children, and so I I co-authored this last time, and I'm co-authoring it again with Richard Nelson. He has a
Okay.
bill around literacy. That's something that Mississippi did,
Mhm.
where if a child is not able to read at third grade and it's way below reading level, that they retain them. And so they're not promoting them to fourth grade, that they retain them and that they get them services, to help them, be able to read.
Exactly,
Because
right.
what we know, if you're passing them on and they're not able to read, then they're not going to be able to learn. And so it worked in Mississippi, and their literacy rates improved.
Exactly.
So I am supporting his bill. Really, any kind of literacy bill, anything that helps promote literacy. I think that is just one of our. I mean, we're just promoting kids into school that aren't able to read, and so he's.
I love the idea because sometimes, it's just human nature when there's a deadline, and human nature is, for most people, is to get the job done before the deadline. And you'll see people rushing, rushing, rushing. It happens in sports. The most exciting part of the game is always at the end of the game, the last couple of minutes, when everybody's rushing to reach the goal or win the game. And I think the same thing applies to the human spirit in education. If there's a deadline that says, "Hey, these children need to be able to know how to read by this age," you're going to get the parents involved because they don't want their child. You're going to get the child motivating themselves to, in most cases, and then you're going to get the teachers on board that says, "Hey, wait, if we have to our schools have to meet certain standards, our teaching has to meet certain standards." I think they're going to be rushed to meet that deadline. And I think it's a great idea. I
Yeah,
think
no,
I
I
I
think
think
it's a great idea. I was sad to see that it die in the Senate. So hopefully it can make it's all the way through.
well, there's some new majorities, that I think might work on this, but I don't think that it should have to rely on majorities. I think that it's something that crosses all party lines, and that's the point that I wanted to make with that I think this is something that's good for everybody. It's good for our state, but most important, it's good for our children.
It's good. It is, and it is bipartisan. And I think anytime you're doing something that's different from what you were doing, it
Right.
brings that certain anxiety for people about change. And so the status quo always wants to sort of stay with what it's doing, but what we're doing is not working. So that's why we need to do something different. And we need to make sure if close to 50% of your kids at age third grade are not being able to read, then we're not doing the right thing. So
Now you said change. What's something that comes to my mind real quick to ask you about this is, does this mean that this is going to happen immediately? So a child that's in the third or fourth grade right now goes, "Oh no," or the parent goes, "Oh no," or is this something that's going to be phased in?
I'm not sure how it's gonna actually. I mean, obviously, we gotta get it passed first,
Mm.
but I know in what they did is obviously if someone, is below reading level, that they retain them, but they're gonna get them in intensive services to get them to learn how to read. And so my understanding in Mississippi is that it didn't take very long for this to start to, like, work, really,
Yeah,
and that the kids were starting to read and, being able to then be promoted, and so
right. This is great. Is there anything else you want to share with us about this upcoming session? Anything else that's a hot topic or anything positive that you look forward to?
I mean, I think I serve with some amazing people that really have a heart for change and want to propel this state forward. And so I'm excited about with the people I serve with and going forward and just trying to help Louisiana and obviously make public safety, make it safer, help
Yeah.
our children, protect our children, and then also improve education because that's, I think, the key to everything.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when with what you just now said, because I've been watching the legislature for a long time from the outside looking in, and I can see, a lot of people, doing a lot of different things to really make a change, to do things differently. And I'm glad that that's your same opinion from the inside, that you are with a group of people that are trying to make change. And once again, I want to commend you and thank you so much for working hard for not just the people in your district, but applying that to the people of the state. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. Representative Schlegel, thank you so much. And look, I hope everybody shares this recording. If you're watching it now, you might be watching it on Rumble or YouTube, but it's going to be on a podcast on all podcast apps. Please share it. And especially if you think somebody else in the state needs to see it. Thank you so much, Representative Schlegel. Have a great day.
Thank you.